The diner was never quiet, but that night, silence fell like a punishment. It wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the kind that crawled up your spine and told you something had gone terribly wrong. The rain outside battered the cracked windows of Rosewood Diner, neon lights flickering red and blue against the wet asphalt. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Coffee cups hovered mid-air. Even the old clock above the register seemed to hesitate between ticks. Every single person inside knew the man standing near booth 7 wasn't normal. He hadn't raised his voice yet. But fear had already arrived. Mira Hale stood behind the counter, fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped ceramic mug. Her apron was stained with grease and old coffee, her shoes soaked through from the walk to work. She was 23, exhausted and invisible, exactly the kind of girl the world learned to step on without thinking twice. Her shift was supposed to end an hour ago. It never did. Table 7, her manager hissed from the kitchen doorway. He's been waiting. Mira glanced over. The man didn't look angry. That was the worst part. He wore a black tailored coat that didn't belong in a place like this. Too clean, too expensive, too deliberate. His posture was relaxed, almost bored, as if the entire diner existed purely for his inconvenience. Pale hands rested on the table. A silver ring gleamed on one finger, carved with symbols Mira didn't recognize. When his eyes lifted and met hers, her breath caught. They were not human eyes. They were too pale. Too still. Like moonlight trapped in ice. Mira swallowed and grabbed her notepad. Just another customer, she told herself. Just survive the shift. She approached the booth, forcing her voice to stay neutral. Sorry for the wait. What can I get you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to enjoy solving. I ordered 20 minutes ago, he said calmly. His voice was smooth, controlled, and carried weight. Not volume. Authority. Mira nodded. Kitchens closed for grill items. Fryer only. Fries or onion rings. The temperature changed. She felt it in her skin first. The man's jaw tightened. The air around the booth seemed to thicken, pressing inward. Conversations nearby faded as if the sound itself had been pulled away. Do you know who I am? He asked quietly. Mira looked at him. Really looked. She saw the way other people avoided his table. The way fear bent around him like gravity. And something inside her snapped. No, she said. But I know where you are. And what we serve. A few heads turned. The man rose to his feet. He was tall. Inhumanly so. His movement was too fast, smooth in a way that didn't belong to bones and muscle. He slammed his palm onto the table. The laminated surface cracked straight down the middle. The sound exploded through the diner. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered a prayer. Watch your tone, the man said, his voice no longer calm. The pressure hit Mira like a wave. Her knees wanted to buckle. Her heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to retreat, to survive. But she didn't. She was tired. Tired of being shouted at. Tired of choosing between rent and food. Tired of lowering her eyes so other people could feel taller. She stepped closer. Close enough to smell winter and steel. Shout at me again, Mira said softly, every word sharp and deliberate, and this ends. The diner stopped breathing. Even the rain seemed to pause. For one terrible second, the man stared at her as if deciding whether she would live. Then, he smiled. Not kindly. Not cruelly. Intrigued. He sat back down. Fries, he said. And coffee. Black. Mira held his gaze for a heartbeat longer, then turned and walked away on shaking legs. She didn't look back. 10 minutes later, when she returned, the booth was empty. No man. No coat. No presents. Only a stack of $100 bills beneath the salt shaker. And a folded napkin. $4,000. Written in elegant ink. You have fire. Don't let the world put it out. Lucien Vale. Mira stared at the name. A shiver ran through her. She didn't know it yet, but by standing her ground she hadn't just confronted a customer. She had challenged the vampire king of the city. And he had chosen her. Mira didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes she saw the cracked diner table, the way the man's eyes had studied her. Not with hunger, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous. Interest. She lay on her narrow mattress in her tiny apartment, rain tapping against the window like restless fingers. The heater rattled uselessly in the corner. The napkin sat on her nightstand, smooth, flat, the ink sharp and elegant. Lucien Vale. She had searched the name. Nothing official came up. No social media. No corporate profiles. No criminal record. Just whispers. Obscure forums. Half-deleted posts. Old conspiracy threads that vanished mid-scroll. Mentions of a veil syndicate that controlled entire districts without ever appearing on paper. People who asked too many questions stopped posting altogether. Mira shut her laptop. Her chest felt tight. Just a rich guy, she whispered to herself. That's it. But deep down she knew better. The next evening she took the late shift again. She needed the money. Always did. The walk home after midnight felt longer than usual. The streetlights flickered. Shadows stretched too far. Her footsteps echoed behind her, then didn't. Halfway down Fulton Street a car slowed. Myra's grip tightened on her bag. She quickened her pace. The engine cut. A door opened. Mira Hale, a voice called softly. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She turned. 3 men stepped from the darkness. Not drunk. Not loud. Their movements were wrong, too smooth, too coordinated. Their skin had a sickly gray tone, eyes dull and yellowed, teeth glinting just a little too sharply when they smiled. Predators. You shouldn't have talked to him, one said, circling her. The king doesn't share toys. I don't know what you're talking about, Mira said, backing away. Her heel hit brick. The wall stopped her. Hands closed around her wrists, cold and crushing. The smell hit her next, metal and rot and something ancient. She fought. Screamed. It didn't matter. One of them leaned close, breath icy against her ear. Humans break so easily. The night exploded. The air shattered like glass. A force slammed into the men, ripping them away from her as if they weighed nothing. Bodies hit the pavement with sickening cracks. Mira collapsed, gasping. Footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate. She looked up. Lucien Vale stood beneath the streetlight, coat untouched by rain, eyes glowing faintly silver. The shadows bent toward him like servants. He didn't look at the men. He looked at her. You're hurt, he said. His voice wasn't cold now. It was restrained. The men tried to crawl away. Lucien raised one hand. They froze. You were warned, he said softly. They screamed as the darkness swallowed them, bodies dissolving into ash that scattered across the wet pavement. Silence returned. Mira shook violently. Lucien knelt in front of her, removing his coat and draping it over her shoulders. It was warm. Too warm. I told you not to walk alone, he said. You didn't tell me anything, she snapped weakly. You left money on a table and disappeared. Something unreadable crossed his face. You should have been protected, he said. I didn't ask for this. I know. He met her eyes. Really met them. And that is why you're still alive. He helped her to her feet, one hand hovering respectfully at her back, never forcing, never grabbing. Come with me, Lucien said. They won't stop now. Why? She demanded. Why me? He hesitated. Because you didn't bow. The car appeared without sound. Inside, leather and quiet. Mira sat rigid, hands clenched in her lap. Lucien sat across from her, giving space, watching her as if she were fragile glass instead of prey. Those men, she said. What were they? Failures, Lucien replied. Vampires who forgot restraint. Her breath caught. You're not even denying it. I don't insult intelligence, he said. Especially not yours. The city slid past the windows. They rose higher, lights thinning, buildings sharpening into glass and steel. They stopped at a tower that pierced the sky. Inside, silence reigned. Lucien led her into a vast penthouse. Walls of glass, dark stone floors, fire crackling without heat. This is where you'll stay, he said. I'm not your prisoner. No, he agreed. You're my responsibility. He poured her water, not wine. Sat across from her, hands folded, posture controlled. You humiliated me, Lucien said quietly. In front of my own kind. Mira stiffened. And instead of killing me, she said, you tipped me. He smiled faintly. You reminded me what respect feels like. He leaned forward. There is a war coming. And you are now part of it, whether you want to be or not. Her voice trembled. So what happens to me? Lucien's gaze softened. I make sure no one ever hurts you again. Pause. And you make sure I remember why that matters. Mira looked down at her hands, still shaking, still human. Then back at him. If you ever shout at me again, she said, this ends? For a moment the Vampire King looked, surprised. Then he bowed his head. Understood, he said. Mira woke to silence so complete it felt unreal. No sirens. No arguing neighbors. No rattling pipes. Just a low, steady hum that seemed to come from the walls themselves. She lay still for a moment, staring up at a ceiling made of dark stone veined with silver lines that faintly glowed, like veins carrying light instead of blood. The bed beneath her was impossibly soft, wrapped in charcoal sheets that smelled faintly of cedar and winter air. She wasn't dreaming. The memory of the alley came back in a rush, the hands on her wrists, the sharp teeth, the way the night itself had obeyed Lucien Vale. The Vampire King. Mira sat up abruptly, clutching the blanket to her chest. Panic flared, fast and sharp, until she noticed something small but grounding. Her shoes were neatly placed by the door. Her bag sat on a chair, untouched. Nothing had been taken from her. The door opened with a quiet slide. Lucien stood there, already dressed in a tailored black shirt, sleeves rolled back just enough to show pale forearms etched with faint markings, old symbols older than language. "You're awake," he said. She stiffened. "How long was I out?" "For hours," he replied. "You were in shock. Your heart rate was unstable." Mira frowned. "You were monitoring my heart rate?" "Yes." "Why?" Lucien paused, as if considering several answers before choosing the most honest one. "Because your life matters under my roof." That unsettled her more than threats ever could. He gestured toward a long table where a tray waited, toast, fruit, eggs, tea steaming gently. "You should eat," he said. "Humans recover faster when they do." "I'm not a pet," Mira snapped. His gaze sharpened, not angry but alert. "And you are not treated like one here," he said evenly. "No one eats unless they choose to." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Mira slid out of bed, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and approached the table. She ate cautiously, half expecting this to be some kind of test. Lucien watched from a respectful distance, arms folded, posture relaxed but attentive, like a guard pretending not to guard. "Those men last night," Mira said quietly. "They said you don't share." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I don't," he said. "But not in the way they meant." She glanced up. "Then explain it." He considered her for a long moment, then turned toward the window. With a subtle gesture, the glass darkened, revealing the city below, alive, sprawling, vulnerable. "This city believes it belongs to humans," Lucien said. "Banks, governments, corporations. That is the illusion." Mira swallowed. "In truth," he continued, "it is governed by older things. Clans, bloodlines, power that does not appear on ballots." She set her fork down. "And you're at the top." "Yes." He didn't say it with pride. He said it like a burden. "When a king shows interest in something human," Lucien went on, "others see opportunity, weakness, leverage. So they came after me." "Yes." "And you killed them." "I erased them," he corrected. "There is a difference." Mira hugged herself. "You could have just erased me too," she said. Lucien turned back to her. "I could have," he agreed. "But I didn't." "Why?" she asked again, her voice quieter now. "Because I yelled at you?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Because you didn't fear me," he said. "Not when it mattered." She scoffed softly. "I was terrified." "Fear exists in the body," Lucien replied. "Submission exists in the soul. You never submitted." The words settled heavy in her chest. Later that evening, Lucien took her outside. Not to the streets, but to a balcony so high the wind itself felt thinner. The city glittered below like a field of stars turned upside down. "You want to go home?" he said. "Yes," Mira answered immediately. "I can't allow that." Her shoulders tensed. "But," he added, "I won't cage you." He handed her a sleek black card. "My protection," he said. "Anywhere in the city. Show this and doors open. Threats disappear." She stared at it. "And if I don't show it?" Lucien's eyes darkened. "Then I will come," he said simply. That night she learned what it meant to walk beside power. They attended a charity event, Lucien's name printed in gold on banners, donors bowing subtly as he passed. Mira wore simple clothes, no gown, no jewels. She expected judgment. It came quickly. Whispers followed her. Eyes narrowed. A woman in silk laughed softly. "Is that a waitress?" Mira felt the old heat of shame rise. Lucien felt it too. He stopped. The room froze. "This woman," Lucien said calmly, his voice carrying without effort, "is under my protection." Silence fell like a guillotine. The woman's smile collapsed. "She speaks for me," he continued. "She walks with me. And any disrespect shown to her is shown to me." The message landed. Art. People who had ignored Mira moments ago now bowed their heads. Apologies poured in. Offers followed. Myra's hands trembled, not from fear this time but from something else. Validation. Later, in the quiet of the elevator, she looked at Lucien. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes," he replied. "I did." Their eyes met. Something shifted. Slow. Dangerous. Unavoidable. For the first time, Mira realized something terrifying. The monster feared losing her respect more than he feared losing his throne. Power, Mira learned, was loud when it felt threatened. It whispered when it was absolute. The first sign something had changed came the morning Lucien didn't leave her side. Normally he gave her space, freedom within protection. That day he stayed close, his presence heavy, watchful, as if the air itself required his attention. "You're expecting trouble," Mira said as they stood in the penthouse kitchen, the city waking beneath them. Lucien didn't deny it. "A challenge has been issued," he said. Her stomach tightened. "Against you?" "Yes." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Because of me." Lucien's jaw hardened. "Because someone believes kindness makes me weak." Mira exhaled slowly. "And does it?" Lucien studied her. "No," he said. "It makes me dangerous in ways they don't understand." That evening they attended the Crimson Assembly. Lucien hadn't wanted her there. Mira had insisted. If she was the reason for the storm, she refused to hide from it. The assembly hall lay beneath the city, carved into stone older than Chicago itself. Crimson light glowed from veins in the walls, illuminating rows of ancient figures seated in silent judgment. Vampires of old blood. Clan leaders. Executors of night law. And at the center, Lucien's throne. He took his seat without ceremony. Mira stood beside him. The whispers were immediate. A human. Standing. Not kneeling. Then a voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "Is this what the Veiled dynasty has become?" The speaker stepped forward, tall, elegant, eyes burning with cruel amusement. "Lord Corvin Drace. Old power. Old hatred. You parade a human through sacred halls," Drace continued. "You shelter her. You speak for her. Tell me, King Vale, does she warm your bed as well?" The insult rippled through the chamber. Mira felt it land like a slap. Before Lucien could speak, she did. "No." Every head turned. Myra's heart hammered, but she didn't look away. "I stand here because I earned respect," she said, voice steady. "Not because I was taken." Drace laughed. "You are nothing." Lucien rose. The sound of his throne scraping stone echoed like thunder. "She is under my protection," Lucien said, his voice low and lethal. "And she speaks with my authority." Drace's smile sharpened. "Then let us test that authority." The challenge was formal. Ancient. Binding. A trial of conduct. If Lucien failed, his rule would be questioned. If he succeeded, the matter would be closed. Myra's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Lucien looked at her. "It means they will try to break you without touching you." The next days were brutal. Not violence. Worse. Humiliation. Servants ignored her. Nobles spoke over her. Invitations vanished. Smiles hid knives. She was isolated in rooms full of people, treated like an embarrassment Lucien was expected to discard. Lucien never once asked her to endure it. But he never stopped her either. Because he knew. Mira wasn't weak. The breaking point came at the banquet. A noblewoman accidentally spilled wine down Myra's dress. Laughter followed. Mira stood still. Then she smiled. "It's fine," she said calmly. "I grew up cleaning worse messes than this." The room quieted. She met the noblewoman's eyes. "And unlike you," Mira added gently, "I don't need power to know my worth." The laughter died. By the final night of the trial, even the elders watched her differently. Respect had shifted. When the verdict was called, silence reigned. "The human has shown restraint, dignity, and courage," the eldest judge announced. "The king's conduct stands." Drace's face twisted with fury. Lucien turned to Mira. For the first time he took her hand in public. The chamber bowed. Later, alone on the balcony, Mira let out a shaky breath. "I was terrified," she admitted. Lucien's thumb brushed her knuckles, barely a touch. "And yet," he said softly, "you never became small." She looked up at him. "You didn't save me," she said. "You trusted me." His voice dropped. "And you did not fail me." The space between them closed, not with a kiss, not with words, but with something deeper. Trust. Victory did not bring peace. It never did. Mira felt it the morning after the trial, standing at the penthouse window as dawn threatened the horizon. The city below moved like nothing had changed, cars, lights, ordinary lives unaware of how close the night had come to tearing itself apart. You should leave, she said quietly. Lucien stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back, posture tense. That is not an option, he replied. For you maybe, Mira said. But for me staying makes everything worse. He turned. You think I haven't considered that? He asked, voice tight. Every hour since the diner. She faced him fully. Then why do you keep choosing me? Lucien didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower. Roar. Because the night was hollow before you stood in it. The words hit harder than any confession. Before Mira could respond, the air shifted. Lucien froze. Get behind me, he said sharply. The lights dimmed. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor. The penthouse windows darkened as if night had rushed back early. A presence pressed in, ancient, furious. Lord Corvin Drace stepped out of the darkness as if it were a doorway. You humiliated me, Drace snarled. In front of my peers. In front of the blood. Lucien moved forward. Leave. Now. Drace's gaze slid to Mira. I don't think I will. The attack was instantaneous. Drace didn't strike Lucien. He struck the bond. A wave of psychic force slammed into Mira, stealing her breath, her balance, her voice. She collapsed, pain screaming through her veins like fire laced with ice. Lucien roared. The sound shattered glass. He was on Drace in a blur, the two colliding with enough force to crack stone. Power clashed, ancient blood against ancient will. Mira tried to move. Couldn't. Drace laughed even as Lucien pinned him. She feels it, doesn't she? Drace hissed. Your anchor. Your weakness. Lucien hesitated. Just for a second. Drace used it. A blade appeared in his hand, black, humming, carved with runes that drank light. Lucien turned, too late. Mira saw it coming. She didn't think. She moved. She threw herself between them. The blade pierced her side. Pain exploded, white, blinding. Lucien screamed her name. The world tilted. Lucien caught her before she hit the floor, blood staining his hands. His control shattered. The room trembled. Drace tried to flee. He didn't make it 2 steps. The shadows closed in, crushing him, ripping the life from his body until nothing remained but ash. Lucien didn't look. He couldn't stop looking at Mira. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Her breathing was shallow. Weak. Hey, she murmured faintly. You said, I mattered. His hands shook as he pressed them to the wound, power pouring out of him uselessly. You cannot die, he said desperately. I forbid it. She smiled, small, tired. Still bossy, she whispered. Lucien bowed his forehead to hers. I will give anything, he said. Anything. Just stay. The blood stopped. Abruptly. Lucien froze. The wound sealed itself, slowly, unnaturally, skin knitting together as if time itself had reversed. Mira gasped, body arching as energy surged through her veins, warm, ancient, alive. Symbols flared briefly along her skin. Lucien stared in stunned silence. You're not just human, he breathed. Mira collapsed against him, unconscious. Hours later, she woke in his arms. Lucien hadn't moved. What happened? She whispered. He looked at her like he was seeing the sun for the first time. You are a living anchor, he said. A rarity older than my throne. She frowned. That sounds bad. It is sacred, he corrected. You can stabilize vampires without bloodshed. You calm the night itself. She absorbed that slowly. So all this time, she said, I wasn't weak. Lucien's voice broke. No, he said. You were the balance. He gently pressed his forehead to hers. I will never use you, he swore. Even if it costs me everything. Mira reached up, fingers brushing his cheek. Good, she said softly. Because I didn't save you to become a weapon. For the first time in centuries, the vampire king wept. The night did not recover quietly. News traveled fast in the underworld, faster than blood, faster than fear. Lord Corvin Drace was gone. Erased. His seat at the Crimson Assembly left empty, his banners burned, his allies scrambling for cover. And the reason for his fall was not a war. It was a human girl who refused to kneel. Mira felt the change before anyone told her. The city sounded different. Quieter. As if the night itself were holding its breath. She stood on the highest balcony of Thornspire Tower, wrapped in a dark cloak Lucien had given her, not as armor but as warmth. The faint glow beneath her skin had faded, but the feeling remained. Awareness. Connection. She could sense the pulse of the city now, the ebb and flow of hunger and restraint beneath the streets. Lucien stood beside her, no longer towering ahead, no longer guarding from a distance. Equal ground. They're afraid, Mira said softly. Yes, Lucien replied. Of you. She let out a quiet laugh. That's new. Lucien turned to her fully. They are afraid because you are proof, he said. That power does not belong only to the cruel. A summons arrived at dusk. The Crimson Assembly demanded her presence. Not as an object. As a voice. The hall felt different when Mira entered it again. The same stone. The same crimson glow. But this time the whispers weren't mocking. They were uncertain. Lucien took his throne, but Mira did not stand beside it. She walked forward alone. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The eldest judge rose. You have changed the balance, the judge said. Explain why you should be allowed to remain. Myra's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. I never asked to be here, she said. I never wanted power. I wanted dignity. Silence followed. She continued. I was mistreated because I was poor. Ignored because I was human. Nearly killed because someone powerful decided I was disposable. Her gaze swept the room. And the only reason I'm standing here is because someone finally treated me with respect. Lucien didn't move. He let her speak. I won't be your weapon, Mira said. I won't be your shield. But I will not disappear so you can pretend the world is fair. The judge studied her. And what do you demand? Mira swallowed. A choice, she said. For humans. For vampires. For anyone without a voice. No one should be punished for being small. The chamber was silent for a long time. Then one by one heads bowed. Not to Lucien. To her. That night, Lucien abdicated half his power. He dismantled blood contracts. Ended the feral hunts. Opened the courts to human witnesses. Chaos followed. Then order. Mira watched it all from his side, not as queen, not as captive, but as conscience. On the night everything settled, they stood together where it all began. The diner was closed now. Neon dark. Windows boarded. Lucien looked at it thoughtfully. This is where you changed me, he said. Mira smiled faintly. This is where you learn not to shout. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Lucien turned to her, expression unguarded for once. I will never bind you, he said. Not to me. Not to this world. Mira stepped closer. Good, she said. Because I'm not staying out of obligation. His breath caught. Why are you staying? He asked. She reached up, resting her hand over his heart, feeling it beat, slow and steady. Because you listened, she said. Because you learned. Because you chose to be better. Lucien closed his eyes. When he opened them, the night seemed warmer. He leaned down, not to claim, not to take, but to ask. Mira met him halfway. The kiss was soft. Human. Real. No fire. No hunger. No dominance. Just two beings choosing each other. Months later, the city slept easier. The vampire king ruled less. The human woman stood taller. And every time someone raised their voice at someone weaker, the night remembered.